Okay, hi everybody. This is the production readiness review meeting for Kubernetes for May 27th. Um, all right, so thank you all for coming. It's great to see so much interest in shadowing. Uh, Macha, do you want to say a few words? Do you want me to? It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. So we reached out last time because we were interested in seeing more people and we were struggling with additional folks interested in. For those that are not fully aware, because I'm not sure if I did provide the entire review of what a production readiness is. There is this awesome document that we have which describes what the process for production readiness looks like. It also goes through what we are requiring from any candidate going through our shadowing program to become a full-fledged production readiness approver. So I would probably start and advise each and every single one of you that haven't seen the document to read through it, just so that you have an idea what the process looks like. In our main document that is in the agenda, at the top of the document, we already also have information linked regarding the 137 release, which means there is a board. The board has all the enhancements that are being tracked by the release team. And in the board, we are marking what is the process and what is the state of every single enhancement that we are reviewing. Who is the main approver from the six of us currently on the list? And there's also dates. Up until now, what we used to have, because there was usually one-to-one mapping between the approvers and the shadows. But currently, if I'm looking correctly, that list is a little bit bigger. We'll probably try to figure out how to match them based on the time zones and who we can match the people with. It looks like a lot of the people is India or Asia, which might be problematic because only Wojtek and I are in Europe. So we'll have to figure out how to match them. I see that there's a few people from North America as well. So I'm not worried about that part because we have folks like John, David, Kevin, and Joe working off of USA. So I'm not worried about that part. The rest will try to figure out and somehow map the shadow approver assignment, and I'll probably try to do it after this call. I need to also make a note who actually showed up for the call, and I'll probably just follow up with those people that are today because it seems like the list that we have in the document is a little bit bigger than what we are actually seeing. Maybe except for two people that I know that are interested in, but for one person, it's middle of the night because the person is from Japan and the other person is constantly forgetting to show up. But I know that he's interested in because he pinged me several times already. So I'll try to provide the mapping. The one thing that we used to do in the past, John, can you show the 137 board? Right. So as you see, the we're always working, we meaning the production readiness team, we're always working on the second tab, which has a PRR. And aside from the usual information about from the release team, the most important part for us are basically the PRR status, which will be either it's in process, which means a PRR assignee already is looking at it, or it's approved, that means it's already done. It doesn't mean that it has to be merged, but it's already approved by the PRR. Further to the right, we used to have and we still have a PRR shadow. And up until recently, we usually just had all the people who wear the shadows. I'll probably make sure how many people we have. I'll probably update the necessary, I'll open a PR with the necessary people so that you should be able also to assign yourself the shadowing. This way, you can claim working on a particular PRR. There's also a notes field, which is a great way to leave a comment regarding, oh, I looked at it. This is what I'm doing. So, for example, John is actually showing one row with my comment from earlier today, where I already started looking at a particular cap, and I left there a bunch of comments. I'm usually just leaving a date for myself because the next time that I'll be looking at it, I want to know when I was looking at it last time. So it helps when you're going through the document, and especially when you're working between a shadow and an actual approver, that also helps figuring out what is this the state. Um, I don't know if that's roughly all I could think of. I don't know if I forgot something, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just back it up a step. The document that Matcha mentioned, this one, if you haven't reviewed that, take a look. It explains what it's about, but I'll kind of give a little summary. I mean, the idea is that, and many of you have probably been on the other side of this if you've worked on caps, but the idea is that as features get added to Kubernetes, it's often difficult for the person working on the feature to have a full awareness of all the other things in Kubernetes, all the other things going on, as well as um, developers. In our nature, we tend to get focused on satisfying our functional requirements and sometimes miss the non-functional ones. And so part of this is to ensure that we hit those non-functional requirements of observability and scalability, maintainability. Like uh, also, most people don't have experience running clusters with running thousands and thousands of clusters, tens or hundreds of thousands of clusters, and the way you manage clusters at that scale and scope is really different than how you manage a handful of clusters. And so a lot of the production readiness questions are geared towards making sure that um, large organizations like that have the tools they need to manage across many clusters. That's where it's important to have metrics and to be important to be able to say, hey, somebody's using this feature, so I can't just go and turn it off or whatever it may be without warning them or whatever. So and then of course when features are in development, they're not always as stable as we'd like, and so that's why we have feature gates in Kubernetes. So the production readiness makes sure that the feature gating is done, or at least designed appropriately, and that the upgrade paths are thought through. So those are some of the kind of primary goals of the whole program. And operationally, like execution wise, we don't look at every PR going in. What we look at are the caps. So we make sure that that the author of the cap has taken these things into consideration and documented them so that you know users will have some sort of run book or troubleshooting and will be able to understand how the feature works and how it can be observed and all that. So it's we gate on the cap, not on the actual implementation. It's up to the SIG reviewers and approvers to make sure that that the implementation follows the design. So this group and your role as a shadow would be to help make sure that the caps meet the criteria to examine the answers and make sure that they make sense and are adequate, and kind of put yourself in the mindset of, not I have one cluster I'm trying to manage, but I have 10,000 clusters I'm trying to manage. How would I figure out what the heck is going on? Um, and try and take that point of view. Um, the the shadowing has been, I would say, a little rough, helpful, but not as successful as we'd like. Maybe I should put, like it's a little bit hard. We get really crunched in the very end, right near the cap freeze, and so that makes it hard for there to be space in the schedule for the shadows to have input and then the approvers to come in. It's still helpful, and it's helpful to learn. And like, we have several people who've graduated through this process, so it is not uh, uh, totally useless. It's helpful both for us as approvers and for the shadows for learning, and eventually people can become approvers. But it unfortunately is not as productive as I would like, I guess. Maybe I'm just harsh, but essentially what happens is, because people don't tend to finish their caps until there's a reason we have a 1 week ahead of time PRR freeze before the cap freeze, and that's to give us time. Basically, the idea is, if you've put your PRR stuff in by that date, then we should have sufficient time to review it and get feedback and give you feedback and get a couple rounds of iteration in before the cap freeze. And now the release team is enforcing that deadline. So like, people have to have their production readiness sections filled out by that deadline. So that makes the shadow program work a little better, because now we have a little bit more space. But as we go forward into it, I guess what I would ask is, those of you who do end up shadowing, jump on things as early as possible, even if it means reviewing it and saying, and just, well, we only have a couple of weeks now anyway, but saying, hey, you haven't filled this out yet, please fill it out ASAP so that we can review it. Like, but I guess if you're a shadow, you should be prepared, for shortly before the PRR freeze deadline, and shortly before the cap freeze deadline, to be devote a fair bit of time to this. I mean, for the approvers, it's going to be like, we end up voting like, whole days, right before. For shadows, it may not be, it wouldn't necessarily be so intense, but anyway, any questions? I think maybe we should open it to questions now. Well,
I could go with the question. So, what would be
okay.
a good example of past PRRs? I mean, there are many caps, of course. If you had to suggest a few to go through and see the comments and wrap up about how things went from a retroactive perspective, could there be a guidance about just look at or look at any, do you say look at any of them, or look at the specific ones that are good than others?
I'm trying to think of some that, so there's if you look at that document, there are a few examples linked there in that document, and also in the KEP template itself. I believe there might be some examples. I don't know if they show the review process happening. Probably much, if like the PRs that previous shadows submitted to go through the approval process, like Joe or Kevin probably has some good examples in there, because that helped them get through. I think that yeah, that would be a place to start.
Yeah, makes sense. Human beings usually think somewhat alike. So if you say, okay, the person was asking these kind of questions, and that's how they change
Yes.
about. So it will paint a picture instead of going on a blank slate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I get it. That's super useful. And I just can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, I
Sure.
remember from a few years ago, I did the IPv6 one, and I remember that was interesting
Okay.
because some of the issues there were like, okay, if you have um, thousands and thousands of endpoints in a service or lots of services, and you flip this switch, it was going to end up like doing
Yeah.
a massive population of things. Like so we had to talk through some of the scale issues and the implications of like the roll forward and the roll back on scale and things like that. So those are
Understood.
some of the more interesting. But that's quite a while ago, and it's probably
Yeah.
a
What I
lot
could
of
do is I'll just ask this question on the Slack in the PRR channel, and whoever
yeah,
can jump in with some examples. Go for it.
yeah.
I dumped the PRs promoting Kevin and myself to approvers. Each of those issues will have the change itself is less relevant because that's only adding my name or Kevin's to the PRR owners, but the description is what actually is important. The description is basically, if you look at the document that we were talking earlier, towards the bottom, there's a section about becoming an approver where we list out various different cases that you should review as a shadow to become an approver in the end. As you're working slowly through the process, you can already start putting together a document and filling in the blanks that, oh yes, this is the PR that I looked there. And then eventually after a few cycles, because it basically to check all the necessary boxes, that will take you a few releases.
Yeah.
Once you have a few PRs per each box, you will be able to create a PR like this one. And so those two PRs, I'm looking for Joe's still. As soon as I stop talking, I'll find it.
Good
Um,
help.
um, but that should give you roughly what the shadow review looks like. Usually, what we've tried to do is for every single PR, when working as a shadow, you can explicitly mention that you're working as a PRR shadow, and here are my comments. This is also a
Mm.
signal that and for the CAP author that you're shadowing, and then there will be another review from the actual PRR approver.
Like this.
Yeah, and so the notes, the way we do it, since we probably won't have another meeting before, unless it's an ad hoc meeting before I think Cap freeze even. It's kind of snuck up on us here. That notes field is super useful for communicating. So like between the shadow and the reviewer. So the shadow does a review, and they'll say, "I did a review on this date. I left I left, but and then as we get close, what I tend to do is every time I iterate through and respond, I put an update or every time I just check it, like because what ends up happening when you're an approver at least is like you don't want to be the one to make the cap have to do an exception because you didn't get to it, right? So I'm going back personally and on my list and checking throughout the day and seeing if I got a response, and so I just note when I last looked at it so that I know what to do it. But the same thing as the shadow can say, I looked at it this date, I made some comments, and then that tells me, oh, okay, I can go back and look and see if I agree with those or offer some additional guidance. So I think probably if Machi goes through and makes the assignments, he'll do it by time zone. Then of the approvers maybe can, if they so desire, have an ad hoc meeting with just those shadows, kind of go through how they do things. Maybe do one or two together um, uh, live. That might be helpful too. And what you'll see is like they're pretty different. Like the alpha ones to the beta ones to the stable ones are like the stable ones tend to be like pretty straightforward. You're kind of verifying that like everything should have already kind of been done at beta. Beta is the hardest one going to beta when they go to beta. When they go to alpha, there's a lot around like enablement, disablement. But to go to beta, you have to look through the upgrades and the metrics and scalability and lots of other pieces.
Yeah.
The next meeting that we will be having, and John shortly mentioned that, is on June 10, which means we will be already past the PRR freeze because it is due on Tuesday, end of day anywhere on the planet, basically. So that will be the last week, and that could also potentially be a good place where you can have some additional questions. And there probably will be, as John mentioned, maybe 1 or 2 days tops for you to actually do the shadowing, because then, given that the actual PRR deadline will be on the subsequent Tuesday, I'm guessing that Thursday, Friday, and the next week's Monday, Tuesday will be primarily devoted to the primary approvers to go through their own reviews.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually works out pretty well because it's right after the freeze. Not the freeze, it's the freeze where they have to have entered it. It doesn't have to have been reviewed yet, right? And so then we'll have the week to review. So we can that'll be a good time to do some. Hopefully we'll do some before that, but any other questions? I don't, if there are not, I don't know that there's a reason to keep us here. Acha is going to divvy people up, and then usually the way we do the assignments on the board itself is if if it's an alpha and nobody's reviewed it yet, then we kind of like try to shard them across the approvers. But if it's going to beta or stable, it usually sticks with the same approver because they've already got context, even if they have to swap it off of cold storage. Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to ask for the approvers. Is anyone like unavailable the next like 2 or 3 weeks? Like vacations or anything?
I'm around. It's
I think I see
I
Joe.
think the cap freeze is the day before my anniversary, but other than that, I'm okay.
My wife's birthday is right in the middle, but no, June 7th, but it's a Sunday. So cannot tell her caps take priority. That won't go well. Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good then. Yeah, it's always good to know if I have been doing a scan through them and just assigning the shadows and poking the approvers or poking the keps to make it clear if we know what state, like what is actually what they're planning on doing for a release. Because I guess it's sort of snuck up on everyone, it seems. Yeah, it's only like 2 weeks.
Like every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Thanks, John.
Yep. All right. Anybody else? I will. I see somebody's asking for the recording. I will put the recording up today. I'm not always good at that. It's not automated yet. I'm trying to figure that out, but
So from
okay.
from a timeline perspective, would you be declare? I might have not grokked everything from a timeline perspective. I'll see this. I mean, see this recording again maybe. But would that be like in the Slack channels? Would I see those chatter and follow through, or how would it go? The timeline around the next freeze, and we should get
Okay.
through
Yeah,
the call to action. So when I take an action, when do I take an action? Action today,
got it.
tomorrow?
Yes,
Yeah.
in the Slack channel, after Matcha divides people up, the approver you're assigned to will reach out to you on Slack.
Okay, sounds good.
Make sure that everybody makes sure that if you put your name in the doc, that your Slack handle is there, or at least you join the Prod Readiness channel so we can find you more easily. Because sometimes there's a lot of people in this Slack. There's like a lot of people with the same name. It can be hard sometimes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Last call for questions. Okay. Well, we're very excited to have all of you here, and let's try and make it so everybody gets a chance to do some shadowing at least. As our keps grow, I think it's good to have the team grow. So thanks all.
Bye,
See
everyone.
y'all.
All right.